Philip, so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here, Naimul. Oh, and hello to everybody watching. So happy to see all of you here. So thanks for having me, Naimul. It's great.
Awesome, awesome. I love the energy in the room, and we really, really appreciate all the work that you're doing in the ecosystem, Philip, on your own side, but especially in some of the networks I'm involved in, and most recently in Connect. So we really appreciate all the ecosystem support and boost you're giving with your energy.
Thank you, thank you.
Um, Quick question, which I ask everybody who is joining us on Connect Talks, is that we are very curious in knowing what got you interested in startups. Let's start there.
I mean, that question is sometimes I'm asking myself, how did I end up here? That's a question I ask myself. And 2 3 weeks ago, I was standing on a stage in Falun and the Gävle giving a talk together with my co-host of my podcast for Almi, and we were talking about investor getting capital and attracting capital, and I was talking about pitching, and I was sort of asking myself, how did I end up there, standing in front of investors and speaking about finances and stuff like that, because I'm not a financial guy. I mean, back up 10 years or so, I would have been asking how did I end up here. So I mean, my background is actually a bit strange when it comes to doing public speaking or even getting into startup, because I have a background with a speech impediment called a stutter. So that's sort of where the title, the stuttering rhetorician, comes from. And by just chance, I got into a rhetorical program in 2014, a 3-year university program, and we're looking for jobs afterwards and didn't really find any. So I just started my own business as a public speaker and rhetorical coach, and eventually through other jobs got into the ecosystem of entrepreneurship, project management and business developing and stuff like that, and just saw that a lot of entrepreneurs and companies out there struggle with getting their message out there. So pitching and becoming a pitch expert as well as a rhetorical expert sort of just happened, I would say, and that's sort of the journey that's been going for many years. But it's strange to be part of it. I love it though, so that's fantastic. But sometimes I wonder, how did I end up here?
So, very interesting point, Philip. I think uh, in many cases we don't know where what we want out of life, and then life happens, and one starts enjoying it. And
Yes,
sometimes you think, okay, now it's a time to pivot, and then
yes.
you take a pivot just like you would in a startup. So great to hear about your journey, and you've been very actively involved in the Nordic and Swedish and different part of Sweden as a country ecosystem,
Yep.
sub-ecosystems. And we have seen, at least I have seen your entire journey through this process. So it's an inspiration for ecosystem builders. And you've been, as you said, you're now very deeply involved in helping startups with clarifying their messaging, storytelling, pitching, and
Exactly. Yep.
that's where I think startups need to work a lot. What are some of the mistakes you have seen in this journey, which is that startups are making when they are trying to pitch to investors, audiences, co-founders, like wherever they are pitching? What are some of the
Yeah.
fat mistakes?
I mean, it's there are. I don't want to bring people down here, but there are many mistakes that people do. So just
Mhm.
choosing one of the biggest one. But when I looked into all the pitches that I've analyzed, I mean, I
Mhm.
started a project in 2020 where I was going to analyze as many pitches from Dragon's Den and Shark Tank and Swedish Draknästet as possible. And after upwards of 1,000 doing these analyses of these pitches, I mean, one of the first things that I noticed with this is, I mean, people don't practice pitching. I mean, that's one of the biggest concerns that I have. And it's all people who are watching this. I mean, imagine yourself. having the impact of giving investment to somebody,
Mm,
and that person isn't prepared. That person can't get their message out there. They can barely explain what they are doing with their business. I mean, wouldn't that feel kind of absurd? I mean, that somebody is asking for 100,000 kroner or upwards of 1 million, and they aren't prepared when they are just asked a simple question. So, what do you do as a company? Because I see a lot of entrepreneurs procrastinating this with practicing the pitch. It's I understand sort of that the focus is on the idea and the product development, and even verifying and doing a market analysis with their target groups. Stuff like that can even be challenging. But
mm.
then out of the blue comes the opportunity. Oh, you have a pitch in 2 weeks for 50 investors, and they start to practice like a week before. And I'm horrified. I'm like, why? How can you not prepare more? So that's, mistake one, number one, not preparing.
No, amazing. And if we can take a short pause there, like you have hit the nerve. You have hit the nerve. It's so important that point. Like we do, I do a lot of, so I run a global network here in Nordics, which has a 99-second pitch. It's
Oh,
a
yeah.
99-second pitch. In Connect and some of the other networks, in Nutty Ventures, I run a 2 minute pitch format. In Connect, we run 3 minute pitch formats.
Yep.
And despite 4 page long instructions going twice to startups,
Yeah.
we still end up startups which are unprepared. So I think you are making a very, very important point. And it reflects for the investors because I was very recently in a Founder Institute global session where it was not an investor session. So an entrepreneur said that, it's not an investor session. It's okay if I pitch. And then a very senior mentor over there said, every session is an opportunity session. So no
Yes.
session is too non-serious to go unprepared. So I think this is an amazing point coming from Philip that you need to be prepared. It shows that you value somebody's others'
Yes.
time, and you have done your homework, and most of all, you are serious about what you're doing. So I think preparedness and patience. I have a quick question there before
Yeah.
we move on.
Go for it.
What do you think stops people from preparing? Is it difficult? Is it fear? I don't know. What
Yeah.
would be the reason?
I've looked into that a lot in a lot of the workshops and coaching that I do. I
Mm,
mean, we
mm,
talk about, structure, rhetorical tools, what
mm, mm,
information should I have in my pitch and in what order. And then I can also have to add to the ones that I coach or in workshops that I do that we need to talk about, the pressure of, doing a pitch, having a sales meeting with a customer. Whenever you're doing, a pitch, it's in so many different, it's on stage, it's in a closed meeting with customers
mm,
and investors. And I would say definitely fear is one of the biggest obstacle to why we don't prepare. And I also think that perhaps the feeling of pitching and practicing it
mm,
makes some people feel that they don't really know how to do it in the best possible way. So just
mm,
the practicing can sometimes feel a bit like I I'm not good at this, so I'm gonna just postpone it. Maybe it becomes automatically better if I just, practice it a day or two before. But that's not how it works. So
mm,
I would say fear of looking bad about getting, it affects self-esteem and
mm,
confidence when we
mm,
don't
mm.
feel that I don't really get my message out there, or I'm nervous about this situation, this sales meeting or investor meeting. So, and I think fear of pitching is something that we need to talk about more, being more
Yeah.
open about.
So very important point, fear of pitching. And then, of course, there is always a tomorrow. Like anything which you can't do today or don't want to do today, you can always say, okay,
Yeah,
tomorrow's bucket
exactly.
and day after tomorrow. But really interesting point. So I think I love it that you brought out a very, very important topic which doesn't come up. So typically when we are doing investor presentation, the mistake, they're not presenting the numbers right, model is not clear. But I think you hit the nerve with the point of procrastination, practicing being the main thing, which shows preparedness and avoid procrastination as a founder.
Yeah,
What
definitely.
else? What else? Like one thing is preparedness and
Yeah,
practice.
definitely. No, and the sort of looking into sort of the content of mistakes
Mm,
when we're pitching, I
mm,
would say not making the problem we're solving with our solution clear.
okay.
Uh, I've uh, I also run a, as you know, Naimul, but perhaps not
Mm,
everybody out there. I run a podcast called Drakpodden, which is a
mm,
Swedish podcast where we are interviewing people from Draknästet, Swedish Dragon's Den, and one of the dragons, the investors from Swedish Draknästet, was Evelina Antila, the CEO
mm,
of Well Street, and I mean she listens to and reads thousands of pitch decks each year. And the number one mistake that she said that everybody's doing is that they're not able to explain the problem they are solving.
mm,
And this is usually, it sounds easy to talk about what problem we're solving, but just as a practice to all of you who are watching, just ask each other if you see, a fellow entrepreneur, ask them to explain the problem they are solving without talking about their solution.
mm,
People usually don't know how to do that because we are so eager about talking about our solution and product and service. But that's not the same as explaining the problem. So being able to clearly talk about what problem we're solving is crucial for making people also feel why this is important. Why should I listen to you? What can you do
mm.
provide for me? So that's biggest mistake number two.
Okay. So practice or preparedness, so lack of preparedness or lack of practice, and
Yep.
then the problem side. And you mentioned something very interesting here while you were explaining that people are immediately they fall in love with your own product and you
Yeah.
start this like you forget the problem and you go to the product slide. How
Yeah.
can one detach? Like,
Oh yeah.
not the.
Oh, I love it how you're symbolizing that because that's usually what I do when I talk to entrepreneurs.
Mm,
Fantastic, Naimul. I mean, basically, what people should view it is as two different parts. The problem
mm,
and the solution. And what you can do, and just a quick tip on how to sort of separate these two to make it very clear, is
mm,
that when you're talking about the problem, talk also very importantly about the consequences that this problem causes.
mm,
So if one talks about the problem as sort of the umbrella or headline, and then you have different consequences that affects the target group
mm,
that are having this problem, then you can use a bridge over to talking about the solution. And a very simple phrase can be, and therefore we have created, and
mm,
then you have the product or your solution. So just talking about those two very separately, and then having
mm.
just that bridge in between, so that people understand why have you created your product in the first place.
Very interesting. I'll request the community. So, any ideas, if you have something to say about your startup, just put it there and get quick feedback. Chat is there where you can interact. So, if you have any observation or if you have a question related to your own pitch, like for example, Rafal is saying how to tackle a 15-minute pitch with 30-minute follow-up Q&A. Should I present for full 15 minutes? Okay.
Depends, it's always about, I mean, if you get a 15-minute pitch and
Hmm,
you have 30-minute questions afterwards, see if you can do it in 10 minutes without having, a fast speaking tempo.
hmm, hmm,
What could I remove that's not super relevant, or what could also be answered more deeply in the questions? So it's always about looking at your content of the pitch, and instead of seeing it like this, I have 15 minutes, great. I promise you that everybody who's listening are gonna feel like, oh, they could make their pitch in 10 minutes.
hmm,
I mean, thumbs up. That's not a bad thing. But you can only do that. You can only make it shorter by practicing a lot.
hmm.
I know that Winston Churchill have a famous quote. He said, "If you want me to speak for an hour, I'm ready now. If you want me to speak for 3 minutes, I need 3 weeks of preparation." So it's the same thing here. If you have a 15-minute pitch, see if you can do it in 10. Yeah.
Very good point. Very good point. What do you think is the most important part of a pitch when you are delivering it in front of an audience? Based on your experience, you have been a public speaker yourself.
Yeah.
Like, where is the meat to get the maximum attention?
I mean, looking into just content-wise or even
Mm,
body language or
yeah.
sort of, yeah, I mean, delivering, a pitch is always about asking, what does the audience want to hear? Who
Mm,
is in front
mm,
of me? Who is my target group? And I usually say that, I mean, getting the attention of people, it's, I mean, nowadays it's so hard. If you speak about something that's not 100% relevant and you speak about it for 10 seconds,
mm,
you can lose people's attention like that. And especially investors. I mean, some customers as well, of course, that depending. But investors, I mean, they hear so many pitches all the time. And there are three questions that I basically tell everybody who's making a pitch and structuring a pitch. There are three questions everybody are just dying to get the answer to as
mm,
fast as possible. And those questions are, why should I listen to you? What do you want me to take action on? What's your product? What's your proposal? What's your offer? And how does that make my life or your target group's lives better?
mm,
And I mean, answering these questions as fast and clearly as possible without speaking too fast, that's the most important part when it comes to just getting the attention and keeping the attention of the pitch. And one thing that I also see as a mistake people can do in the beginning of their pitch
mm,
is that they're using, sort of, a cliche or very, long storytelling about their background, which is fine. However, if you can summarize your pitch and what you're going to talk about for the next minutes in one sentence, then people are more inclined to, okay, I get where you're going with this pitch.
mm,
Now I can listen more deeply about your story to the problem, the
mm.
solution, and etc. So it's all about these three questions fast without speaking fast.
Very good. You're absolutely right. I think the software and more with pauses, like the language use is an art itself. So if
Yes.
we are presenting in a natural tone, it will land naturally on people's ears, and
Yeah.
the body language will also. So the other, yeah. So I think that's a very important point. I also kind of go back to something you said a few minutes ago when you were trying to connect the problem and the solution side, that use something like connectors like therefore. And I think that's very important, because let's say if you have 10 slides, it's important that they hang together as a story. So
Yeah.
they should have these linkages, and it's good that you have a natural flow, as you're saying, that don't rush one slide 10 seconds, another slide 2 minutes,
No.
and then you're like have a natural flow so that
Yeah.
each information point is naturally delivered. We
Yeah.
already have, so please put up your questions. We already have something coming up here from Sherry. Hi, Sherry. Thank you for joining today's event. Great sharing, Philip. Question about the entrepreneur part of your life. Even as a pitch coach, you also need to do pitches
Yeah.
to find clients, get funding, for example. Did you find it difficult in beginning?
Oh, yes. I mean, oh my God. If you wonder how much I practice my own pitches and still, evolving this, if there's anybody watching here and hoping to hear that, having a prepared, getting, a finished pitch, getting to that moment where, oh, I never have to work on my pitch ever again. My pitch is perfect. I have bad news for you. I am always practicing and evolving my own pitches. I mean, I've always looked into how can my own content be applied to myself and my entrepreneurial journey when I'm contacting customers, when I'm contacting organizations to sell my services as a pitch coach.
Mm.
And one really important thing here, that if you have different products or solutions for different target groups, you have different pitches.
Mm.
You can
Mm.
follow the same structure: problem, solution, result, and value. And for the investor, it's a little bit more information. But if you have a product that helps a target group in one way, and you have another product in your company that helps a different target group in a different way, those pitches doesn't sound the same. You can have the same structure, but the content is different. So yes, I'm always questioning myself, how can my pitches become better? So that's something that I've learned the hard way myself.
Very good. And I have a question now because we have been discussing till now pitching in a more general
Yeah.
format. Let's try to break it down a little bit. Because sometimes maybe you are creating a public service based SaaS startup and your audience is commune, so you need to go and pitch there. Or sometimes you are raising funding from an angel investor. Sometimes you're going and pitching for a co-founder, like, please get on the bandwagon. It's a great startup. Do you need to have a single pitch or do you need to adapt or should you have completely different pitches when you're pitching to different audiences? Is there a difference? How should startups crack that code?
Yeah. I mean, what I usually look into is
Mm.
one to have sort of one general pitch. I mean, to have one
Mhm,
structure
mhm, mhm,
where you look at your pitch, you're looking at, let's say, the structure that I'm teaching, which is hook, problem, solution, and result. Those are the basic fundamental parts in any pitch, because
mhm,
those parts answer these three questions. Why should I listen to you? What are you doing? But the thing is, when you're then talking to a customer,
mhm,
you explain in their perspective, what problem are you solving for us? What
okay.
consequences do we suffer due to this problem? And how can your solution be applied to our company so that we can get rid of these consequences? And the same thing for the investor. They want to know, what problem are you solving for your customer? And is that pain large and big enough for the customer to invest and buy your products or your services? And looking into, adapting it to a co-founder, it's
Mm,
about also understanding what problem are you solving for what target group, what's your solution. But you also want to adapt and also uh, perhaps share, why should you as a co-founder care about this as much as I do?
mm,
Why? And that is all about finding what's relevant for the person you're talking to when you're doing your explanation of what you are doing yourself. So it's all about looking into how can I connect my pitch to this specific person that I'm talking to. If it's an investor, have them understand what you're doing, and then find key things that they can, be attracted to. Sort
mm,
of timing, why is this an important subject for you as an investor to care about? Perhaps are you investing in similar companies who are solving similar problems or in the same field? As a co-founder, are we do we feel attracted to the same thing? Do we emotionally care about the same problem to solve this?
mm.
Perhaps on a social level, on a moral level, like, where does your heart lie? But
Okay.
but the structure is the same. Making people understand why you're doing what you're doing, what problem you're solving. That's the basic fundamentals.
Okay, very interesting point. And I'll kind of stay there for a little bit because
Yeah.
we get a lot of, because in Connect and some of the other ecosystem, we help startups kind of connect them with the funding opportunities in the market. And, funding has been a lot stressed lately. So startups really need to zero in on, can they find alternative sources, like, for example, loans, combine it with some sort of project funding, combine it with some sort of early VC, early angels, and eventually they all know each other.
Yeah.
So, and all of these have their own perspective. Like, for example, and this is a very important point for startups, like, if you're going for project funding, typical project funding organizations basically want to create a large effect in the, so they are not after returns, they are after effects.
Yeah.
If you go for loans, loan organizations want stable return and they want to make some profit on it. When you go to an investor, they probably need a 10x, 30x, 50x, 100x,
Yes.
depending on the type of investors they are in terms of return. Some investors, especially VCs, will not touch your case if at a very, very early stage you cannot be a 50x for them, because then you are too small. So very interesting point there. Let's take another point, Philip.
Yeah.
Like there are several formats of pitching, but let's try to break the COVID driven online pitching trend,
Oh
because
yeah.
that is very, very hot right now. A lot of pitch sessions and investor connections happens there, and then in person.
Yeah.
Should startups approach these? Make the same hand gesture again.
Yes, I
Should
love
they
it.
approach should they approach this as same, or are they very, very different? How startup founders should approach these?
They are similar. I would say there are things when it comes to online pitching that it's the same as doing it in person. And let me just share some examples here. Let's say that I'm doing a pitch to you right now. Uh,
Mm,
I mean, if we were to sit down in a meeting, and perhaps that works sometimes, but if you're
mm,
pitching to several people, you wouldn't really sit down in the physical meeting. You
mm,
would stand up, right? Because you would want that presence. You want to make, that sort of impression in that in-person meeting. And it's the same when you're doing it online.
mm, mm.
So you don't want to. It's totally fine, Naimul, that you're sitting down right now because this is not a live sort of pitch format. But I mean, I'm always standing in all of my
Okay.
meetings and coaching sessions. So just standing up makes a huge
Yeah.
difference. And it amazes me how much people are sitting down when they are doing an online pitch because they wouldn't do that in an in-person pitch. It's just
Mm,
automatically we would stand up and have that sort of presence in the actual room. And one other thing when it comes to standing up, the way we use our body language becomes so much more effectful. You see me now, I'm doing a lot of gestures.
yeah.
And it comes automatically if you know how to handle your nervousness. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about nervousness, but one of the things that nervousness impact is that when we become nervous, we want to close our body language. So
Mm,
usually we will put our hands together, cross our arms, make ourselves smaller in every different way. And
mm,
that's why it's more comfortable to sit down because we get this table in between us and the people we're pitching to. And even if we're pitching online, we feel more relaxed when we sit
mm,
down.
mm,
But the impact becomes so much worse. And I just quickly show some just other things that we could improve when we're
mhm.
doing an online pitch, and it's basically like this. I can just quickly share a couple of slides here.
Please, let's go.
Um, this is just a quick example. This is how we usually do, right? Our cameras end up in the corner. We become quite small, and we
Mm,
share some slides like this. Now, most people, they don't have white text on black background. They do like this. So, I mean, if I just go forth and back like this, people quite fast start to feel this is too bright,
yeah.
this is better. So this is just, basic one-on-one, black background or dark background, right? But what happens also is that we are usually also doing something with our camera.
Mm,
This is not typically how we do it. This is usually how we're doing it. We have the frog
amazing.
pose. Yeah, I mean, imagine you just ask yourself which looks best, this camera angle or this camera.
Yeah, of course.
I
Mm,
mean, tremendous difference, right? So this is just something that I want everybody to know that when you're pitching, stand up, have the camera when it's online at your level in your eyes, don't have the frog perspective like this, please. And I'm not gonna, advertise here, but there are, software programs that you can use to just make it better. So instead of
Mm.
sharing slides, you can use something called a virtual camera to just add stuff like this. You can even, put your presentation in within your camera like this,
Yeah.
so that impact becomes so much better than, just sharing your slides. So this is just something whenever you're pitching, I mean, you don't have to be super tech savvy to do it online in a best possible way. If you just put your camera like this instead of the frog perspective, it's 100% better.
Very good. Very, very interesting points. And I think I love the point when you talked about the white versus black and eye strain.
Yes,
Also imagine like as a startup, will you be pitching in night or daytime? Will there be light in the room if you are live? It makes huge difference
yes,
when you are presenting. Like dark screens have come out on all user interfaces. They are very popular even on mobile screens. So
yes,
see how consumer behavior is evolving and how everything is looking, and especially how your brand guidelines work best, because
exactly.
it eventually needs to deliver that.
Yeah,
Let's
definitely.
talk about some other stuff as well. Like there are two alternative schools of thought. There's a school of thought which is hustle based, which says fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the way to build startups. And then there's a school of thought which says trust, authenticity, stand with substance. So there are two sides. Startups can still be built both ways. Which side do you prefer?
It's such a great question, I absolutely love this because, we're both quite active on LinkedIn.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
we sort of see people, posting, fake it till you make it sort of content, and we're also seeing the very authenticity that sometimes we may not feel is this content, is it too private? Is it supposed to be on LinkedIn? It's a professional platform.
mhm, mhm.
And this answer is gonna be so frustrating because I would say it's sort of both.
Okay.
But there is one thing that I've seen when it comes to this authenticity,
Mhm,
and I think that Gary Vaynerchuk, the
mhm.
famous entrepreneur from United States, he posts a lot of content about this, about being authentic. And one thing that I think that's super important that he shares is, you know, whenever we're starting out our business, we don't really want to sort of tell people that we're just starting out.
Mm,
We perhaps want to have the perfect website or the perfect product before we even show somebody that first prototype or MVP. But being previously in business development as well as a pitch coach and rhetorical coach, building your product and sharing your journey, how you do it with your customers and the people you're talking to, that's the sort of authenticity and storytelling we want to share with the people. Because if
mm,
you can do that, you're doing two things. You are validating towards your market. So if you start sharing in the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey, saying, I'm building this startup, give me your best advice and your best feedback instead of fake it till you make it, sort of showing how professional and good you are, and saying I have this many followers or I made this much money and it's just fake. It's better to be authentic and say, I'm just starting out, we're trying this new product, or if you have come a little bit on the way, and build it with your target group. That's the sort of authenticity that people love and it really gets across on all platforms. So that's my sort of in between advice when it comes to these two things.
amazing point. I think it points to what I hear from it is founders at the very like irrespective of what approach you choose, like
Yeah.
on the hustle side and fake it to the make till you make it versus genuine substance authenticity side. The common line which I find is that you still need to build your brand
Yes.
as a founder.
Yes.
How important is that, and what are some of the things you have seen work for founders when they are in the pitch mode? And there are some founders who are just writing stealth startup and they are not even publishing anything, as opposed to founders which are sharing their journey. So, what is the kind of approach which you think works well for founders when they are building startups
I
in terms
mean,
of personal branding?
yeah, in terms of personal branding, sharing your uh, what you learn
Mm.
on as you build your startups, sharing basically give people the insights that you are growing with the startup. I mean,
Okay.
you are I do see some people, talking very much about, or specific people on LinkedIn at least that I follow, that shares a lot about this time I've interviewed 50 people or something within this target group, and I learned this new things that we're going to implement in our products, and asking for people to engage in. Are you also this target group of these 50 people? What do you think about their knowledge that they now shared with me that we can now implement in our products?
Mm,
So I
mm,
mean, building that personal brand is, I mean, equally as important, if not more important, than building your company's brand, because we connect with people and not only with the products or the brand of the company.
mm.
So sharing your journey, how you are growing with the company, that's the sort of advice that I would definitely give to people.
I think that's an amazing point, because let's equate that to the real life. So imagine you are at a networking or a business event. How would you strike a long conversation with somebody? You'll sit down and you'll start talking, and you'll talk both positives and negatives. That's
Yeah.
where you build empathy, and another
Yes.
person can connect with you, as opposed to. So I think a very important point, the underline which I find from what you're saying is, don't treat social media as a synthetic outburst of content, because synthetic content you can use chat gpt and create the best content, but then that is always a positioning of synthetic content. Treat
Yes.
it more like a natural network where you can
Yes.
make real connections. So really interesting point. We are almost close to the end part. I don't know,
Oh, so
time
soon.
flew so fast. Well, let's see. We have a few questions, but I'll pick one of these which is slightly long. But let's see. Junior has a question. Thank you for the question. And I'll also thank a couple of entrepreneurs who really love what you're saying. Sherry, thank you for following Philip. She's already booked a time with you. So let's see. Junior, what is the best tip you have when pitching for a new product that don't really exist on the market yet, or that's very different from current available alternatives,
Hmm.
which makes it difficult to capture the essence of the product without being too technical or spending too much time on comparisons?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Excellent question.
Excellent question, and I do see a lot of the entrepreneurs and startups that I coach who are doing innovations,
Hmm.
which create something new. This is something they struggle with. First, when it comes to not sharing over too much of the technical aspects,
Hmm.
this is a phrase that's, I'm not going to dig too deep into it, but I learned this the hard way many years ago. And the fact is that when it comes to making a decision about your products, your services, what you're selling,
Hmm.
nobody cares about your products.
Wow.
Nobody really cares about all the technical function about how it works. And my minority of very tech savvy, interested people are going to want to ask follow-up questions, but even they don't want to know all the 20 functions. So just take the three top most important technical functions that you expect or know
Hmm.
that the target group is going to use when it comes to your product. And when it comes to establish why is this product going to be important, because it's going into a new market and it's solving a sort of new problem. It's always about going back to that basics, about looking into what problem are not being solved in the best possible way today by current competition, or what future problem will be created if we don't have a solution in the coming years.
Mm.
So it goes into that fundamental basics that I know is so difficult about giving people that insights in why is this important? And that's based on a problem and consequences and pain that follows as a result of the problem. And it can either be a problem they're facing right now or in the future. So that's why going into creating something new is so important to still go back to that fundamental part. Don't
Mm.
overshare tech functions, three most important parts of how your product works, and what problem it solves now or in the future.
Okay, very interesting points, Philip. I'll take one last point to close
Yeah.
off our discussion. Founders find out or they live in a cesspool of problems which they are trying to solve with their ideas and their solutions. So it's a huge task. Like either you are lived through that or you have seen that problem existing and you are like itching, you are like being punched by yourself, like, why am I not solving? And they eventually start solving. Somewhere in building their solution, they realize, oh shit, investors, now I also need to be a movie actor to present so well.
Yeah.
So, and that's an equally big kind of a thing to do. Like one is you're creating what you're
Yes.
creating, and then making others believe that what you are creating is actually meaningful.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of courage. When you
Extreme.
are up on stage, how do you get rid of stage fright,
Yes.
imposter syndrome, or whatever
Yes.
we may call it?
Yeah. It's such a good point, and it goes back to, daring to talk about the fear of
Mm,
pitching. We don't talk about it enough, and I know that many people who are entrepreneurs don't feel like this extroverted person. I mean,
yeah.
giving a speech at a wedding is one of the most fearsome private moments that we face, and now we're supposed to present on stage, a couple of times a year at least, and we're sort of faced with this reality that some people seems to do it without a problem, and then
Mm,
you
mm,
compare yourself to them, and you feel, I'm not a salesperson, I'm not extroverted, so I will fail. And I can tell you that nothing about this is talent. It's only practice. I mean, I had a stutter for my whole life that I learned through different speaking techniques to master. But the most important thing to reduce your nerves and nervousness is breathing. And I know that sounds so frustrating to a lot of people, but the basics of our human nervous system is that whenever we are pitching and feeling that stage fright, we get high levels of adrenaline and cortisol. And the best antidote to that makes us nervous, is oxygen and reducing those stress hormones. So practice breathing techniques. If you do it in meditation or just Googling different breathing techniques, I do deep breaths in through my nose and expanding my diaphragm whenever I'm doing a public speaking gig.
mm,
Always on the bathroom, 10 minutes before, 15 minutes before, I take 15, 20 deep breaths and you
mm.
just feel that nervousness going down. And you're never going to feel 100%, confident. You're always going to feel a bit nervous, but that's just good. I mean, Usain Bolt, when he ran 100 meters, he wasn't, not nervous. And it's the same thing here. We are going to feel nervous when we're pitching, but we can reduce it by breathing techniques and by practicing. Because the more you practice, the less nervous you will get. That's also important.
Very interesting point. I actually make music and I also sing. So I found out when I've done, let's say, when I've recorded a song after recording half a demo or something, it's much better because the vocal cords and
Yes.
everything is already working halfway down the studio recording,
Yes.
and you can sing so much better halfway through a studio recording. So bad thing
Same,
on my
same
part, I
thing.
never practice. So good point. Learning today, practice, 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 and also what you talked about that you cannot be 100% fear free,
No.
except that Otherwise, you'll become nervous about being nervous.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's like going down, down, down on the spiral. Philip, this has been such an interesting talk.
I'm delighted to have been here. Thank you so much, Naimul, for every awesome thing you're doing with Connect. I mean, everybody who's watching here, big applause and thank you to Naimul because he's the real star of, creating these talks. So thank you for having me.
And thank you, Philip, for the amazing work that you are doing in the ecosystem. I've put your LinkedIn there and I've put some of the links. The audience can stay along for 2, 3 minutes while we close it. But, Philip, a big thanks for all the work that you are doing and for the amazing energy you brought into today's room. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye.